We'll try it. We're gonna have to try to up your volume, Lynn, when we get to you.
Yes, we can hear you. Just as we go when we get you.
You don't spend everything in mode.
Yes.
In fact, the last thing I got from you was like 17. Your personal time?
Yeah, I didn't write. You're getting my emails, but you did on.
So I haven't got any 17 last
Hey,
You can't see a regular email right now, right? Are you sure it's not going to the Kershaw County?
There you go. Mark set it up.
I don't know what's in the government said.
No, I responded to your test email. So I just sent you another one.
He said,
Put
Jim.
test in.
So I thought.
I mean, talk to your IT guy, so my email is here. They're in the cloud.
Mark Surrey at
So do that,
bellsouth.net.
do something.
Okay.
So you're gonna promote it in the summer, yeah.
He's not getting my emails. Oh. Which new one?
I had one before, a couple of years ago.
Hey,
It's right.
can you get to your email? If you go to your email, we're gonna use the slide deck to navigate through this meeting tonight.
Can't go to my other computer.
No, it's your personal email, whatever you're using. And you are tracking the live streaming tonight, right? For live stream.
It's just backwards. It's right. It's just backwards from how you.
You have another email address. I'm just making
It's
sure.
right there.
You've got three of them in here. Todd.McDonald at JRate. Who's it? JRate. JRate.
He's a confused man. That's right.
And is that link there? Did you see it, or do you see an email from him?
I'll look at it over.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Actually, read stuff.
Yeah, I did too. I looked at mine earlier.
Not all of us can be like that. Copy.
I mean, no.
I've missed you guys so much.
I can tell.
It's right.
Well, you know, you can find it in Korea after this week.
Like where?
Find it in Korea.
We can go to Lowe's, everybody else is there.
Drive by every day.
That's it for more. I got 2 nights. Where's his?
I can't say that.
Yeah, so we are live streaming, so when we talk, so that people can hear us, just make sure that you project, and we're in a U, and so over here on this side, your back's to the camera, but it's the best we could really do to try to maintain some social distancing. Yeah.
Yeah, can you say something? Yeah, just a minute.
I didn't hear it. It's mine.
Good evening, Chaplain Proctor, would you lead us in prayer before we begin, please?
Heavenly Father, we just come before you tonight or this evening, and we're thankful that you are a good God, that you hear us when we pray. Father, we thank you for this opportunity we have to come together to conduct the business for Kershaw County School District. Father, we're asking tonight that you honor our obedience as we have done our best to keep distance between us and to wash our hands and do those things to safeguard. And we're asking you to show mercy and grace so that we get back to some form of normalcy and beat this virus. Father, we ask now that as we meet, that you give us wisdom and knowledge to make good decisions on behalf of the school district for employees and students. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Call to order the Kershaw County School Board meeting for April the 21st, 2020. Is there a motion to adopt the proposed agenda?
So moved. Second.
Properly moved and second. All those in favor, let it be known by the raise your right hand. Okay. Yes. Is there a motion to adopt the consent of approving the minutes from March 17th, 2020 board meeting?
So moved. Second.
Properly motion is second. Those in favor, let it be known by the raise your right hand. Okay, it's done. So we move down to we're suspended public forum, so we move down to the chairman's report. I just wanted to share with us, just for information and discussion, that the resolution that came down pertaining to the COVID-19, you've had a chance to read over it. It was born out of school boards just raising questions, and then they just basically submitted this, but I think all of the questions pertaining to some things that might have been in conflict with our policy. For an example, the one thing that we addressed right at the beginning was simply suspending the public forum. We suspended that. So that just put us in line, and all the other things have pretty much been in line because of the working with the district superintendent and the state superintendent throughout the state with all of the district superintendents. So it's for discussion. I don't think that we're operating outside of any of our policy guidelines, but it's open for discussion. I think it's just good information. We have not had questions that some of the other boards have had that brought this resolution into being.
You know, Mr. Chair, if I can add, I think some boards and superintendents jumped on this because they were concerned on actions that they may have to take that would be in conflict with their board policies. But, you know, I feel like I've reviewed our board policies. Some of those things will be grading guidelines and things of that nature. And most all our policies are aligned to state law. And so if from state law, they come down with some modifications based on the pandemic, I think us adjusting to those modifications, we're still in line with board policy. We've tried to communicate those things with you. And I think if we ever felt like there was something that we really needed to address, that we could just simply call an emergency meeting. But I really think that if you read the resolution, it really sends a bad message to the community that you're disbanding basically your board policy and you're giving the superintendent and the chair authority to just, you know, make decisions. So that, and Dr. Smith and I talked about it, felt comfortable that, you know, we're able to operate within our parameters of our current policies.
Okay. The next item that we have is a strategic plan update, and we have Mr. Black online that's going to cover that for us, and we can follow along. Is he ready?
Lena, are you start?
What's that, Missy?
Are you ready to join us? It's your turn now.
Okay, all right, I'm ready. You bet, I'm always ready.
Go ahead.
So I see there Dr. Robbins. It looks like we're nicely socially spaced. It's good to see everyone, and sorry that I'm not present to make this presentation, but hopefully in the not too distant future. we'll have more face-to-face conversations, and I know I also owe a few members of the board some one-on-one visitations that I'll again look forward to in my next trip. So I'm gonna make the assumption that my slide is up, is that correct, Dr. Robbins?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I just wanna preface this slide as a tentative proposal of getting back on track, looking ahead and planning for our strategic pillars. I'll also make an editorial comment that based on what the school district is going through, what you've been through and where you'll return, if at all possible to have the strategic pillars in place at the start of the year. I think that will help guide the superintendent as well as the board for future action and focus and concentration, particularly as it relates to the utilization of technology, as all of your teachers have continued to experience in a very different way in the absence of their students. Going to that PowerPoint slide, the first reference is finalize the community and district survey. And the board may or may not be aware that Dr. Robbins, Diane, and I have been developing a survey for the public, for sharing, to get their input in regards to some of the performance of the Kershaw County schools, as well as the direction that they're moving, but also give the community and the stakeholders within your community the opportunity for input. If I recall, and it's been some time, but I do recall that there was a presentation of a strategic plan by a community group, and I don't recall off the top of my head what community group it was, but in my review of that report, something that was glaringly absent in the strategic plan for the community was the input from the school district. And so the intent here is, as we look ahead, to start to focus on identifying what the pillars are that will have the input of the community, which includes some of the businesses, the stakeholders, and also certainly the teachers within the district. So attending target date to distribute the survey, and once again, this is all tentative, and this is driven by the direction of Dr. Robbins as we move ahead, but we have developed a 25-question survey with a lot of review and back and forth. It's difficult in developing a survey that doesn't end up being 50 questions, but then you also have the challenge of making sure that you're asking enough questions to get the appropriate response from each of the stakeholder groups. So if we were to use the target date of the survey to distribute on May the 19th, the tentative return date could be June the 2nd. Analyze the survey results from the 5th into the 12th, and then sometime hopefully in the summer, and again, these are tentative proposed dates, the tentative board and administrative team advance. And don't forget, the language here is purposeful. We're not moving backward in a retreat. We're looking ahead and advancing into the future. At that advance, the survey results will be presented. A review of the input that we've received from those stakeholder groups and discussions that have taken place with the administrative team to identify the key areas of focus. And those are the strategic pillars that could range anywhere from 3 to maybe 5. I wouldn't propose any more than 5 pillars, but again, that's at the board's direction. And then as we identify those pillars, we're identifying the objectives within those pillars and the strategies that go along with each of the objectives that are identified under each pillar. Again, the potential and the opportunity would be to launch or present the strategic pillars to all the Kershaw County School District faculty and staff at the back to school meeting. And then as that occurs, develop a communication plan to all the stakeholders presenting the strategic approach. And then lastly is to evaluate and develop school-based action plans responding to the pillars, which from my perspective really becomes the excitement, the enthusiasm that can come out from within the schools, that they're observing that the board is in sync. We've identified key areas that the district is focusing on, and then it's up to each individual school in their response to holding up and stepping on those pillars to move forward. So that's a lot of work in a couple of months time period. We've been there. Dr. Robbins certainly has been there and done this with me. He understands the process. He can speak to that. But I didn't want us to go any further and lead the board to forget that I've forgotten. And certainly you're always on my mind, my South Carolina colleagues, but to make sure that in my role, I'm trying to also keep us on track. So, questions, comments?
Yeah, I have one, just
Hold
with,
on a second.
hey Lynn, Todd McDonald, how are you doing, sir?
Hi, Todd, I'm good.
Just a quick question on the tentative target date, with everything that we have going on
Yes.
right now, okay? What do you feel like the response is gonna be with all the disruption? Do you feel like we're gonna get a good, base response? Or I mean, just, I want your input on that, because, I mean, this is, you're facing the same thing in
Yeah.
Indiana.
It's an excellent question, Todd, and Mary Ann. I've had discussions in this regard as well as Shane. Certainly, you're exactly right. There has been a lot of disruption that has gone on, and it's it's really the determination and the window of opportunity in which you as a board and Dr. Robbins as the superintendent believes that he can send out a survey and try to receive the highest return rate. I would be hesitant, even under the circumstances that you've operated under, I'd be hesitant to not send the survey at some point in time still in this academic year. There's a couple of questions as it relates to technology. I think that's important right now for the parents because it's on their minds because they've been there and been doing this. And to get some feedback in that regard. I do feel that if you wait too long into the summer, then some of the preliminary work that's been done can kind of create some gaps at that time and they need to revisit that. And I'm more than willing to do whatever the board's desire, but at the same time, my charge is to come in, assist the board and the superintendent with the development of this plan so that we can then execute. So that's
Lynn,
a long-winded answer for that.
so, but here's a thought. I thought the same thing, but because we're operating in this environment, you know, I almost feel like families and stakeholders are almost hypersensitive to what's going on with the schools, and they're forced to be engaged more than they ever have been. So there is a chance that we may even get a better response, even if they think we're not doing a good job in this environment, but we may get a better response because of that, because they are being forced to be engaged, because we're doing everything remotely and virtually. So, I mean, that's another way to look at it.
But I noticed you used the word try, and also when you were talking about questions, 25 versus 50, not asking too many, but asking enough to gather. So what I'm getting at, is there a percentage of response that we need back in order to get a good feel for what we want? And if we don't reach that, then do we need to say, hey, we didn't get the response we need, so we best wait before going forward? Because I hate to waste all this time and the finances and not truly get a good picture of what's going on in our district.
Yeah, it's a good comment, and I think too, and to Dr. Robbins' point, you know, some real stakeholders that we have here in regards to getting parent input are teachers, and the relationships that they form with their parents through this situation, that they may assist us in increasing the number of responses that we get, because they can emphasize the importance of it.
I think we can use our virtual platforms on some of these meetings that we're on. Mary Ann's on meetings, not daily now, but is it still daily? Yeah, so, you know, with community members and really get the message out, where typically that's not what we do. So we may have a good advantage to push that narrative out, but to your point, yeah, if we don't get a good return rate, then obviously we'd have to go back and relook at it, so.
Well, one thing that you might consider as well, and this is Mary Ann's world, but you could essentially try to set up the survey in a teaser type of way, similar to an announcement that's about to be made. What do you call a wedding that's coming? When you send out preliminary date.
Yeah, save the date.
Save the date. Yeah, like a save the date type of application, in which, you know, you're throwing that out there across the community, and the community is saying, well, what is this? Well, keep it a little mysterious, and then suddenly you're sending out a survey that's asking for input from the community.
And Mr. Proctor, I think the things we would use would not be that expensive. So that's one advantage to it. So we already have those technologies in place. So if we did it and we didn't get a good return, we could modify. We wouldn't have spent a lot of money.
Yeah, I'm talking about the overall cost for this whole project, not just the survey. I'm talking for it to benefit us.
Some of the survey questions, and considering the plan that Bill is working on, and each high school, I know each high school have a 5-year plan. Is a survey including some of that information from the high school plan that they turn into the state on a year or every 5 years? I mean, is this a part of this? Is it totally something separate?
Might be a little bit of overlap, but I don't know that it's really that annual. I think two separate kind of entities, probably trying to gather information and trying to make the questions as comprehensive as we can, so that we don't have a long list, because we know at some point people will check out on us. So I think there's probably some overlap.
Well, and the school level, building level improvement plan is more a down in the weeds, you know, type of approach. This is a high level, board level strategic plan that really sets the guideposts of what we're going to do as a district. So it's much more visionary, philosophical, and not so much X's and O's, you know, A's and B's and C's types things that you'll see in the school improvement plan.
Any other questions for Mr. Black? Hearing none? Thank you.
Okay, and, Dr. Robbins, I'll just await, your charge of where you want me to go and what you want me to do.
Hey, Lynn, I know you found it easier to work through Wendy and Mary Ann. I would just say in this environment, continue to do that, just because I'm juggling an awful lot.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's unusual, never experienced that, you're juggling an awful lot. Yeah, I'll go through Wendy and Mary Ann, and, if you need me, Shane, you know how to track me down.
Roger, thank you.
Okay, my pleasure, everyone stay healthy and well, and I look forward to seeing you, in the hopefully not too distant future.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.
Dr. Robbins?
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. It's nice to see your smiling faces. Seems like it's been a while.
Yes.
Hope everybody is and your families are doing well. I have 2 items for the superintendent's report tonight, but they're somewhat lengthy items. I'm going to go over the COVID-19 update that we are utilizing as a school district, and then I'm going to give you an update on where we are with the North Central High School tornado response. So starting with the COVID-19 response, where we are, just to start status. So school is still closed only through April 30th. We have not received any additional guidance. We're going to have a conference call on Thursday with the state superintendent. They were daily calls. They backed them off to about twice a week. We had a call yesterday. The governor has not released a date to extend that. However, we're pretty confident it's going to happen. You know, I was interviewed yesterday by Channel 10 with a couple other superintendents. I mean, they surveyed us, and across the state, we're all saying the same things. You know, if we were to come back on May 1st, it's just, we're really concerned about that for several reasons. When you talk about students in a confined area, lunchrooms and school buses, and then the other piece for me is some of those students that are going home living with grandma and grandpa and the susceptible populations. So we fully expect that that's going to be extended. It just hasn't yet. The state passed a continuing resolution freezing the budget. So we are looking at what we can do. We're not looking at cutting, but we're looking at freezing some of the expenditures that we can get by with right now, just to be protected on the in the near future. We do have CARES Act money that's coming, hasn't come yet, but that CARES Act money is really going to bridge us because this is going to be a 12 to 18 month fallout based on what the revenue streams look like. And if you've been around long enough, you'll know that when we went through the recession in 2008 across the country and we received stimulus money, they always find a way to get that money back, right? And so what they'll do is they'll start to reduce your federal funds, your Title I grant, your Title II grant, IDEA, Title III. And so we have to be smart and not just think that that's free money. We've got to use it to protect people and programs. So that's what we'll do. KCSD schools, hopefully you're tracking, I've locked them down. The only exceptions are if we have maintenance workers and contractors that are on site, and principals I have asked to do just a periodic site visit of their buildings. We do have designated food service locations that are exceptions as well. The daily functioning areas are the district office, and we are on a rotational schedule in the district office, and ATEC, where Educational Technology Services is located. Starting this week, our procedures when you come to the campus, you're going to come, when you sign in, we have a non-contact thermometer. You take your temperature, you answer the questions that you've not been around anybody with COVID-19, you've not been ill, and you're gonna don a mask, you're gonna sanitize your hands, you go into your work environment. So that's just our protocol for the food service areas and for the areas that are being staffed. I receive a daily update from the county, and we're still seeing about 2 to 4 new cases a day. We did have one day we had 0, but again, that could just be testing and the amount of testing we're doing, but we're still seeing new cases, but it has slowed down considerably. Next slide, you'll see, I just tried to put a little graphic together for you. If and when they extend the school closure, more than likely through the rest of the year, what's that mean for us? Well, as a school district, we will establish times for students to come in and to turn in books and turn in computers and to clean out lockers. When that'll be, it just really depends on, the governor's orders and what's permissible, but we are working on that as a team to have that prepared. High school will cancel prom. Awards days are going to be canceled. Graduation has already got a secondary date in place, and we will continue to provide e-learning for our students throughout the rest of the school year. Now, what's that mean for graduation? The secondary dates for graduation at North Central High School will be on Friday, June 26th. And for Camden High School and Elgin High School, it'll be on Saturday, June 27th. For our seniors, it's important to know that all assignments are due by May 15th. And they can have a no later than date of May 18th so that we can get grades in Power School. And there will be no final exams at the high school level. And that's coming from the state. So that's state guidance.
Robert, let me just ask you a question.
Sure.
I get if the governor mandates that we don't go back and we have to move graduations. I gotta ask, any chance of summertime prom for those kids at all? Is it even reasonable or is it not reasonable? I mean, I've seen a lot of schools saying, a lot of parents going, please just move it out, right?
Right.
And it's a special time, and I know we can't do everything. It's like,
Right.
They canceled my son's graduation at the Citadel.
Yeah.
That's a missed opportunity, but high school kids, I mean, that's a special time for those juniors and seniors. So if we can, if it's feasible,
I would say it's feasible. I would never say no. I would just say at this point, we don't have a date. And so it's canceled, but we would work with those kids on potentially what we could do. I had a virtual student cabinet meeting last week, and we started talking about different things that we could do, to try to collect something, for them in terms of what they're missing out on. And so they're brainstorming some ideas. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's a no, but it really depends on, when things really change. And right now, of course, I got Dr. Coppo sitting here, but I've been tracking when this spike is supposed to be, and it's really not supposed to be until towards the end of the month, now the 1st of May. And that's the spike. And so once the spike hits, you could always, then all of a sudden open things up, and then what are you going to have? You're going to have a secondary wave. And so, it just really depends on what the forecast and the trending looks like.
but the school leaders and you are open to that.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, that's just a great
absolutely.
message to put out there.
Yeah.
We're not saying no.
Yeah.
But at least, it's there's always a possibility.
Yeah.
Some things are just no. So.
Well, just sitting here thinking, if you're going to try and do something like that, you would assume that the night before graduation, because people's going to have vacation plans and everything else planned. And if they're coming in for a graduation, if you're open to having big crowds on a Saturday, then it seems to me that maybe that Friday night before the graduation would be an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, and those are all good discussion points to have if and when that happens. Now, again, more to follow this week. We should get a pretty good idea. If it's going to be canceled for the rest of the year, if it is, then we can start planning. These are just kind of what ifs right now, but those are the secondary graduation dates. If you go to the next slide, so what I have done is I've put a brief together that we'll update every week that includes what I think are the key important things to make sure we are able to function with some of those key areas. And so this is logistics for food service with the masks, the gloves, the sanitizers, and the thermometers. And so Tim Hopkins is tracking all that and making sure that we have all the needed PPE at those sites, and those people are taken care of. I will say publicly that the county has been amazing to work with. So when we've needed masks and sanitizer, they have produced for us. And so that's been a really wonderful thing. You know, and then we've had churches that have stepped up and quilting groups that have started to quilt, you know, so we didn't have to use disposable face masks. And just the way people have pooled together to support, you know, us, for example, has been tremendous. The next slide is our
Can
bus.
I just ask, go back?
Yes,
to
ma'am.
the- So it looks like you've been issued masks, not what we need, but you've been issued, but gloves.
That's just not updated. They had some on hand, and so that gives them, that'll give them extra. So we haven't issued any to them.
But right now, we're good. with
We're
this.
good right now, but we need 200 just to make sure that we stay ahead and they don't run out, they don't show up. And so they're on the way. Those are on the way. The thermometers are all on hand now, and the sanitizer's all in place. But yeah, that's good. Good catch there.
Thank you.
So on bus operations, you can see we're using 42 buses, 110 drivers. We have had one driver disqualified. We had to send a driver home because they had 100.7 temp. Right now it's 100.4 is the cutoff. You know, those aren't necessarily real accurate, but it's better safe than sorry. That's our parameters that we're using. So we sent that driver home just to be safe. As you can see, there's no drivers at Lugoff, Elgin High School, or Stover. Those are just food preparation sites. So we don't actually drive and deliver out of those two sites.
Are we using all our drivers or are we rotating drivers? How's that?
We're rotating drivers. Yeah. So food service, this is a good slide. I think this really paints an amazing picture. Now, what we did start tracking is the number of meals that are starting to be returned because we're not having quite as many kids pick up their meals. We think part of it was a ripple effect of the Camden High School presumptive positive that we had. But you can look and see how many meals that we delivered this week at each one of those sites. And then you can see the number of meals we've delivered in total from those sites and the number of meals we've delivered to children of Kershaw County since this event started. And it's over 176,000 meals that we've delivered to the children of Kershaw County. So I just think that's pretty amazing.
Can we make that slide public? It's a great slide to put
Yeah,
out there.
absolutely.
You know,
I'm going to start making this. I'm going to start making this weekly update public as well.
So how is this being financed? Is
So-
it with what was already in our budget that we were over? How
We're
is
getting
this?
we're getting reimbursed for this.
Okay.
We're getting reimbursed for these meals. So we have to capture the meal count and we submit them, you know, just like normal reimbursement. We're receiving our reimbursement. So, yeah. We're not losing money on it. The next slide's our maintenance slide. So the other thing is, you know, when I say I'm locking down the buildings, I want to track where people are, you know, who's working in the buildings. In the event somebody contacts you and says, well, it is my understanding the buildings are locked down. I see all these vehicles, you know, at Dobie's Mill. Well, so those, the train project is the energy savings project that we're working on. You can see there in a variety of different locations throughout the district. And we have our maintenance workers and our general contractors that are doing work as well. So you can see where they are throughout the district.
Dr. Robbins, one of the things, not to get off track here, but one of the things we talked about several times was about the maybe use of the big high school solar panels in there. Would this be a good time with it being vacant to look at that project? But there's no cars there, there's nobody there.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not like you're doing anything.
yeah, that's the issue right there. So I skirted that one, I know.
Yeah.
Next slide is finance, and really not a lot to share with you on finance yet. But one things that Donnie and I talked about is the state did pass a continuing resolution that froze the budget or flatlined it. If this continuing resolution remains in place, then we'll need the board to adopt a continuing resolution as well that goes along lines with the state's continuing resolution. So there are a couple variables that are still out there, and that's whether or not they're going to freeze the step increase. For those of you who've been on the board for a while, you'll know in 2008 they did that, but they gave the local districts the opportunity to not freeze it if they didn't want to. But if they freeze the step increase this year, it will be a mandated freeze, because what that did was it created a lot of inequities across the state that have never been recovered from. And so it's been thrown out there. We don't know if they're going to force that on us yet, but it has been mentioned. Yes, ma'am.
Most of us as board should have gotten a call from the School Board Association. They're gonna have a webinar tomorrow.
Okay.
And some of those questions may come up that same way you're talking about the fees went tomorrow from 12 to 1. And I think you can still register, you just have to, no payment for that. But it came as a call from the School Board Association tomorrow from 12 to 1. They will have a webinar with the legislative update. And some of those questions you just asked is about the fees. Some of those questions will be asked and answered on tomorrow.
If you guys can get on there, that'd be really good.
So can you speak to what we're doing in our district because of what you mentioned earlier with finances and what took place in 2008? Contractors such as cleaning, any yard maintenance, have we cut that? Do we need to look at other stuff to put on hold until we know where we're going? The state penny, I know I'd ask you about this, but state penny, I know it's got to be affecting that. How are we with, we were ahead in our projections for what we've been told, so is it enough to carry us through? How are we looking financially?
So we just had a very broad financial discussion. We're not cutting things right now because we have a healthy budget. But what we're not doing is we're not adding any of the positions that we had talked about adding, going into the next school year. The other thing that we're doing is we're looking at absorbing some areas that are non-essential areas that we can absorb. So those are the two main things that we're doing. The other thing to remember is in 12 to 18 months, we will see some operational savings from the energy savings project that we're working on and from the consolidation of the 3 elementary schools. But we're not going to see that for 18 months. So those are all things that will come into play. We think we're in good enough shape right now that we don't need to do anything else. The one thing we did talk about today on our cabinet meeting call was Dr. Taylor, who manages several of our federal funds, they're going to put quasi hold and try to carry over some of that Title I money in the event we do see some reductions in the future, because you can carry over a certain amount of your federal funds. So they're going to do that to try to protect the federal fund dollars. And the other thing we're going to do is the building budgets for the consumables, it's going to be on a case-by-case basis. So usually they have a budget, and then they can spend their budget. Now you're going to have to really justify that you absolutely need it, because we're going to need to try to maintain those building budgets as we roll into the next budget year to try to save some operational expenses as well.
We have a baseline of cost that we have, because we didn't cut anybody's pay or anything like that.
Right.
But is there diminished cost from all the people being out of the schools and transportation and everything that's offsetting some of those expenses?
Yeah.
So that we're not really losing as much as.
Right. So that's probably another part of the answer to your question. One of the things we did is we went in and we set all the buildings to unoccupied status. So we should be saving on utilities in these facilities, because it's going to end up being over 2 months that we'll have been out of the facility. So that's a significant savings as well.
How about churches that were renting from us? That what they were paying us, I would assume that has stopped. We're not collecting that at this time.
I would have to ask that, but I would assume that we weren't collecting it because they can't use it.
I was going to ask a question for Kim.
Yes, sir.
I don't think it's true. I hope it's not. Because I know these coaches are dependent on their salaries. But I got information that coaches were told that they would not receive their spring supplement.
It's not true.
And that's true?
It's not true.
Then they weren't told.
No. They're receiving their spring supplement.
I know they're supposed to be. I would assume they would be.
They are.
Because it got out that some coaches were told by the ADs that they would not be getting this spring supplement.
Well, they were told by the superintendent they were, so.
Well, if it happened, did you say it didn't happen at all?
Oh, I don't think it did. The question came, would they receive it? And I said, yes. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll quit.
they're receiving their supplement.
And that's the good thing. All of our employees have not been cut in any way
No.
today.
No, we do have some that have been cut, that were serving in aid role or substitute roles. There's just no substitute opportunities for them, And when we talk substitutes, we're not talking substitute teachers. We're talking substitute food service, substitute bus drivers, just a lot of those positions that we can't pay them, but our regular employees.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Yeah, we're still doing. The next slide is a community relations slide, and I've asked Mary Ann to start capturing, all the, just the PR that we've been putting out. And again, this is all designed so when the event is over, we're going to put this all together and share it with the board, and we can articulate all the things that we're able to do. But if you look at this slide, you can see we've had 11 different news events with multiple reporters, 3 press releases. I've put out 21 updates. We've had 2 video soup chat presentations, 102 entries on our employee facts page that we're really pretty quick on the turnaround trying to answer their questions. 7 briefings with county emergency preparedness officials, 3+ briefings with the DHEC officials, and 9 conference calls with the state superintendent, and Mary Ann's on conference calls daily with our emergency manager. So anything else you want to add, Mary Ann, since you said?
And we've used our messaging system too. I just haven't added everything in there. And then social media is something else we'll add in there. That's been a big way that we communicate back and forth. So, and then our schools are doing their piece too. So it's a district piece plus a school piece. A lot of information going on.
One of the things I asked her to do was, as this drags on and morale can tend to dip, it's to try to find good news stories and things that are encouraging in our community with our school district that we can put out there. Yesterday was a great one. A teacher at Lugoff Valley Middle School is the state STEM Teacher of the Year, and so we were able to celebrate that. And so just several different things we've been able to do. We had a student from Camden High School, Special Olympics got canceled. And that's a big day for a lot of those kids. And, he put on a special Olympics event for his sister, which I thought was really neat. So the next slide is safety. I have re-engaged some of our school resource officers, specifically at the food service locations, since we have traffic out there. I think it's important that they stay engaged. They're really kind of reintegrated in with the sheriff's department, but it allows, because we have more traffic flow with parents that are doing the curbside service, meal pickup and stuff like that, that we have their presence. And so we've re-engaged them.
So are we still paying the SROs?
No, that'll change. That prorated dollar amount will change considerably. So. The next slide's a little busy, but I think it's a good one. I'll skip over the first one. I'll go through it real quick. You can take some time to look at it, but you can see the types of computer issues we've had and the types of hotline calls we've had. And then you can also look down at the bottom and you can see the incidents by school. And if you go to the next slide, and I'm very proud of this. in a district of almost 11,000 students, we have only had 370 breaks over this period of time. That's pretty darn amazing.
Define just everything from,
Could be it could be a broken charger, a screen, a keyboard, missing key, you know.
but so missing key, that's a great one, like easy fix.
Yeah.
Versus cracked screen. So what's, if you had to put a percentage wise of major repair versus minor repair, is it even? Is it more major or is it?
We can take a look at the numbers. I don't have the numbers here. But
You're supposed to have it memorized. Right?
If you go on the previous slide, 200 of them are device issues.
Okay.
But then to break down what the device issues are, they put that on in a different spreadsheet. We've had 944 hotline calls, and you know, we've been manning the hotline, you know, daily to support, you know, teachers, parents, students, you know, grandparents, trying to answer any questions they may have. So full service. And that's it for the COVID-19 update. Do you have any questions?
Any questions without questions? I think we should just give a shout out to the food service, bus drivers, as well as the homeschool parents.
Yeah.
They've done an excellent job, so we really appreciate them.
All right, the next piece here is, you know, not trying to get lost in the shuffle here, but we did have a tornado that hit our high school. So it's broken down into two phases. I'm just going to give you a quick kind of overview of where we are. Phase one is pretty much underway. It's the gymnasium, the auditorium, and honestly, it's also the outdoor athletic facilities. The expectation on that is to be completed within 5 months. I will say on our conference call today, with some delay from OSF approving plans, we may not have the football stadium complete in August. It may be the 1st of September now, but you know that they could get the work done a little quicker, but that's, you know, out of our control. You know,
Do we have any idea when they're gonna start?
they've already started.
I don't know, I'm not up and down the road, so I think
Yeah.
it's, but it's,
Yeah, they're doing the survey piece,
Okay.
and they had to do all the surveying piece, and then they had to sit and wait on the plans to be approved. And so it's started now, but again, you know, the other piece to this is how quickly can they get the structural steel in and some of that stuff. So the estimated cost on that on phase one is $3.4 million. And the scope, I just kind of made it general for you. I didn't go into great detail, but it's structural repairs, HVAC repair and replacement, because some of those HVAC units were completely lifted off the roof of the wellness center and the auditorium. So that the gym floor we had to rip up because of the water damage. You know, obviously roof replacement repairs. Along with that will be plumbing, and then the fire protection, sprinkler system repairs as well, and then the electrical system that ties into the sprinkler system. So, but again, it sounds like a lot, but they think they can get that complete in 5 months. They've already taken a good hard look at it, and they've got the plans for phase one approved, and they're ready to really kind of start moving forward on it. And they've already done some preliminary work. Questions on phase one? All right, so phase two is the biggie, and the one we're struggling with.
This will be September also.
So, you know, we're battling with them. We're battling with the insurance company. We just had another conference call today on their understanding on what our Office of School Facilities says must be done for us to occupy a building, and what they think can be done to replace a damaged building. We're making progress. Donnie's still optimistic with them, but we estimate that cost to be anywhere from $32 to $34 million. That's going to be the sticking point that we're going to have to fight with them on, making sure that we get the price tag that we know it's going to take.
So where are they at right now?
25. So.
That's what he's got.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
But when they realize that, I'll give you an example, just a general example. There may be a part of the building that wasn't sprinkled, but in the new code, it has to be sprinkled. Well, you're gonna have to sprinkle the building. I don't care if it's sprinkled before or not. In order for us to occupy it, it's gonna have to be sprinkled. So there's several things like that. The one thing that cannot happen is we can't try to add things into the scope. And so there are a couple people that I have to remind that out of, that they got to keep their ears closed, and we have to work through this process. Now, things such as the band room and some of those areas that we were trying to do some work on, when you replace a building or you remodel a building, it's all based on square footage. Well, there's a lot of that part, a big portion of that building that wasn't utilized. So when we go to rebuild, we can rebuild it to suit our needs, and we can adjust that square footage to give us a bigger band room, to do those things that we're trying to do. So that'll all be a part of this process.
So when it says structural repairs.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean repairing, that could be a new building.
It won't be a brand new necessarily building, it'll be brand new portions of the structure. So, like for example, in the front office where the wall was blown down, yeah, that's all gonna be brand new. But when you go through the building itself, they're not gonna rip down all the structural steel, they'll rip the roof off. And if we wanna widen rooms and do different things within that, where walls were blown out, we can do that. But they're not gonna demolish the building completely and build a brand new building.
And it wouldn't be cheaper to do that.
It wouldn't be cheaper.
Because I thought at one point, the only buildings that were safe were the auditorium
That was.
and the gymnasium.
But
So that's, now it's,
Yeah.
we're leaning against that now?
Well, it's not we're leaning against it. It's the insurance company and the structural engineers that get to make that decision. We don't get to make that decision. So, they're not
I
gonna.
just don't want this school to be pieced back together when, these kids deserve just, it's such a tragedy. And I thought at one point we were all, knew we were gonna have to fight the insurance. I just don't want us to get into them.
We're not. I mean, trust me, we're not. But there's certain things that we have control over and certain things we don't. The things we have control over is to fight the amount of money we can get out of the claim itself. And so our, responsibility is to get the biggest bang for our buck. So the structural steel piece and some of those things, when they say structural repairs, it means it's solid. So we can go in, we can make that thing look like a brand new building. It's just you're not gonna tear down the steel studs. You're not gonna tear down the girders, and the joists, the ceiling joists. You're gonna build around it. So when they say structural repairs, you're gonna have brand new walls. You're gonna have a brand new entrance into the facility. You're gonna have new floors. All that will be brand new. You won't know that it was the same building when you're done. But when they say structural repairs, they're just not demolishing it to the ground and building it from the ground up.
So they're basically using their structural engineers to say, yep, this right here is still completely sound.
Yeah.
You can add to it, build around. So really it's a brand new school, but they're gonna take portions that are structurally sound and use that to add on to it. So yeah, they're not gonna get short.
Yeah.
The question I agree with Kim is, then where's our fight as far as in the money, so that we don't get stuck with that?
The fight is in the money.
Yeah.
And the fight is, by code, do you owe us this? That's where the fight is. And so, it's all based on square foot, a dollar amount per square foot. And that's where they're coming up with, the 25 million, but we know that the coding is going to require us to do things that's going to increase that. So it'll be very nice.
In the wording of the policy,
Pardon me?
We knew it was gonna.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and we're still fighting. Trust me, today was not fun.
in the wording of the policy itself, does it say it covers replacement, or does it say it covers replacement plus any changes in necessary codes?
It doesn't specify
Doesn't
that.
specify that.
No. But that's that's a fact. Because you can't remodel, repair, or replace a building that we can't occupy. if the state says, they've got to approve the plans. And so right now, and so let me backtrack to scope timeline. There's no timeline because plans have to be approved first. And they just now assigned a project inspector at the state level to look at these plans. So to give you a little clarification, you've got our folks, our structural engineers, and you've got the insurance company structural engineers that are evaluating the site and then making recommendations. And that's the first thing. You got to get them to agree, that certain things can and cannot be salvaged. And so those are the conference calls that have been taking place. And then the architect puts plans together on what the rebuild is going to look like. So from the road, it'll look brand new, with the exception of the gymnasium, the auditorium that we're not tearing down. So, and then you can look and see, all the pieces that go into place there. So when you're talking about architectural interior, architectural exterior, I think that goes to your point, Kim, where it's a redesign of the interior, it's a redesign of the exterior and rebuilding of those walls. But the structure piece is the pieces you don't see.
So we don't have any idea what the timeline is.
No, not until the plans are approved and they put all that stuff into play. I've always said 24 months, but that's before, the pandemic hit. So it's not slowed us up, but it slowed up the state on assigning people to.
So the good news is we still have a facility for all those folks to go to that under one roof. Just to follow up on that, I know that the stadium, you said, may not be September, but it will be able to be used for graduation.
Yeah, because we were always going to use the visitor side for graduation, and if we felt like we needed to bring in extra bleachers, we were going to bring in extra bleachers. So, and the scoreboard should be complete. They're fabricating the scoreboard right now, so the nice new LED scoreboard will be up for graduation. Okay. And I asked that today. So baby steps. It's not what we want to hear in terms of the school itself, but that is where we're at, at this point.
If they can't use it in August, where would the football team practice, play games? Do they just have to be moved around to vacant where they can?
Well, that really depends. Waiting until we get a real solid timeline on what their schedule looks like. They can still practice out there.
Okay.
It's all about site safety. And in terms of games, there's a lot of different things they could do. They could flip their schedule and play them on the road. They could, I don't know.
When we consolidated in the 80s, we actually used that stadium.
Well, and that's what's going to be my next point. Could use that stadium, to keep it at least in the county.
Yep.
So there's, looking at the schedule and how many home games there would be, so we just have. I just got that date today, so I haven't even talked to Tyrone about that at all. So that's what I have in terms of the North Central High School update. Any questions?
No, sir. Go ahead. I just wanted, I've listened to everything very carefully. I'm like Kim. I understand how much you're talking about structural. The rib of the building, the inside of the building, the heavy part. It's supposed to be sound and put back or what stays. It's gutted out,
Right.
put back,
Right.
so to speak. And the question I asked, and I still hold you to this question, you responding to me saying that school will be better than it was.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm living by as far as my questions are. I just want to make that statement for me on my end of it, for our folks and our constituents as far as the stadium is concerned. Do we think that stadium will be completed? We have any idea when the stadium will be complete in the baseball field, the softball field, and the dugouts and the things that would hit the scoreboards? Have we got any information on those things yet?
So 5 months was phase one, which is the wellness center, the auditorium, and all the athletic facilities. Specific, pieces of that project, I don't have itemized details, but the overall project was 5 months for completion.
But each individual project could be finished. Some projects could be finished earlier
Yes, sir.
because they're
Because they're smaller and
yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah, and the stadium, like I said, we were shooting for the stadium to be complete in August. But with the delay in getting approval with the plans from the state, today they said it looked like September. Would be the earliest that the stadium would be complete. So,
No, I just want to have that clarification again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Where are we at with the consolidated elementary school?
It's still in the process. We're still going and
OSF approval.
it's still waiting on OSF plan approval. So last time we looked at a timeline on it was January, at the earliest, January of 2022 would be the earliest. And again, all things changed, about 6 weeks ago, because they are now on a very tight schedule with a lot of other things that has put us on the back burner.
Any other
Question?
Any other questions for Dr. Owens? Hearing none. Is there a motion to go into executive session to discuss resignation and retirement of certified and classified personnel, employment of certified and classified personnel, assignment changes and transfer of certified and classified personnel?
So,
Second.
Properly moved and second in discussion. All in favor, let me know by raising your right hand. Okay, that's unanimous. So at this time, I think we were going to stop this and have executive session out here and ask everyone else to give us some time to take care of the motion.